The Champions Cup round of 16 matches are out of the way, and we have lost all of our South African brethren. But can any of the URC teams still in the tournaments make it all the way to the championship? We'll be discussing all that and more in this week's Champions Cup Rewinds. Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Champions Cup Rewind. This is our URC spin-off show where we talk all things Champions Cup, but only for games involving URC teams. So not many to talk about this evening. I am joined today by Irish Adam and Scottish Ethan. Good evening, gents.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
I am, for the sakes of this podcast, Welsh Hugh. I do not have much to contribute this week. But we would normally have South African Mohammed with us as well. Unfortunately, South African Wi-Fi has let him down, and so he's not able to join us. So tune into the Bit of an Animal podcast during the week to get the full South African view on what happened. Anyway, so Adam, before we get into the main body of the Champions Cup action, we just have time to sneak in some Challenge Cup chat, and you can explain to us why you were so cold on Saturday evening.
Yeah, Storm Dave hit Ravenhill. I was at Ravenhill for the first time in about a year or two. Very nice to go back home, especially to watch the rugby. But then, the weather had different plans, to the point where me and well, it was my girlfriend's first time at Ravenhill, first Ulster game. So no, third Ulster game, first win. That's what I was supposed to say. She saw us sail away many years ago in the Champions Cup,
Sail
28-0. We
away,
lost
sail
that.
away. You got to do it. It's the law.
But yeah, Challenge Cup was definitely a challenge to watch. Not for quality of play, I just think for quality of refereeing. But you'll find out more on the Interpro show, as I'm sure you'll find out from our Munster colleague as well on how the Challenge Cup went for those guys. But yeah, it was a nice day out, bar the rain and the £3 coffee, as I said, was like about that size. I was just sort of like, you might as well just charge me for the espresso and a bit of milk. But yeah, good win for us. Positive for next week, but you'll find out more in the Interpro show about my acute smugness.
Well, two questions. Firstly, did you pay your £1 deposit for your cup?
I did not. There was not a £1 deposit. I also bought a Heineken as well. A Heineken and a cappuccino. Some night out, you'd say. But, I was living the high off caffeine, and I was like, oh, nice wee Heineken to end.
Which end were you at? Because you were sat in the end, and the posts were doing that. They were for audio listeners. I'm going like that with my arm. The posts were like, so
What do you think
was
you
the
had?
wind towards you or away from you?
It was towards me, so it was in the
Oh,
memorial
that's
end.
brutal.
It was. Do you know what though? We had the best rugby on our side. Like Osprey scored all of their tries on our side, and we saw a Jacob Stockdale try and a Nick Timoney try, all through nice flowing rugby. So it was nice. The forward pass didn't happen in front of us though, which was on the other side, but it was definitely forward. But yeah, it was towards me, and luckily enough, I've lived to tell the tale. No one's caught a cold. My dad got hit with the ball during the warm-up. Ian Henderson laughed. Just, the classic Ravenhill stories. Got a picture of Sparky. Find out more in the Interpro show.
Well, it's got to be done. Right, let's get to talking about. We're sticking around in Ireland as we talk about an all URC clash between Leinster and Edinburgh. So I was in the car during this game, driving back from my parents after Easter Sunday lunch. Shout out mum and dad, why not? And so I was following the score, and it went early on, it went like, oh, this is boring. And then it got not boring very, very quickly. And then it stayed not boring for a bit. And then it went not boring, but in a different way towards the end. Adam, I'm relying on you to put a bit more meat on the bones than I just did.
Yeah, so when I was watching the game, everyone I'm sure on this call will say that it was going to be a foregone conclusion that Leinster will win. That team that you're showing on the screen right now, if anyone's listening on audio, Hugh showing a Leinster team right now, was incredible. Like it's an incredible team. You'd think that they would be challenging for the likes of the URC and European and anyone on their day, like Leinster could probably beat. That sort of spine of the team being the Irish team. First minute, O'Brien scoring a try, almost straight away from very, very loose play. Like I must say, it was like it was a rock from a break, and then Edinburgh were all tracking back, And then Gibson Park does what he does best, tracking around, passes to Byrne, off to O'Brien, score. Very Leinster try, especially nowadays with their really good wingers, really utilising that wing attack. Same again. For their second try, there's another O'Brien try. Pass to Rico Ioane. Rico Ioane actually had quite a good game. I'll hold up my hands there.
He
Got
called
an
you out when
assist.
he scored his try. Read him. He said, "Adam, you see that?
Yeah,
Come at me,
it's,
man."
it's quite terrifying as I wear a Mario All Blacks kit. I'm sorry, Rico. I'm sorry. Um, but had a really good timed pass out to O'Brien, which created the second try. And then this is when things got really weird. This is the first of many Leinster intercepts. There was lots of cases in this game where Leinster were playing high risk, high reward passes and very much high risk, high rewards. And Edinburgh did very, very well in their blitz defense to catch it. So it was a pass in between. I think it was Owani, but anyway, it was oh no, it was Furlong. Furlong tried to switch it out to the back to Osborne, and then he got hit. And then as he got hit, he tried to release the offload, and then it went straight to the Edinburgh scrum half. Like it bounced and it went up to the Edinburgh scrum half. That's when I was kind of like, oh, this is one of those tries that I think it's not going to happen that much. Edinburgh getting a quick wee dig in before, Leinster start toppling them over. And then it was a couple of minutes later when Edinburgh scored their other try through their I think Ethan, you can help me with this one. It's through their fly half making a really,
Yeah,
really good break. Their fly half making an
yeah.
excellent break towards the blind side off a scrum and just toppling over, beat the first defender. And he had gas all the way. Got to about 14-12. I was just like, oh, right, I'm going to have to take Edinburgh quite seriously here. I'm going to have to actually, because I was like, sort of like, it was one of those games that I'm sure everyone had this in the Champions Cup over the weekend, was on in the background while something else was happening.
Mm.
When the second try went in, I was sort of like, I'm going to actually have to watch this now just to see how one Leinster reply and how two Edinburgh could reply. Leinster replied within 5 minutes. This was a very high scoring game. I must say, this was very entertaining to watch. Jimmy O'Brien scoring a really good try on the wing as well, made off a maul. What I noticed about Edinburgh's defense is that they didn't really have defensive out the wings. Like it was almost
Yeah.
like the wings were sort of just dropping, and there was like the wingers bit in way too much, and Leinster just utilized that. Like they had a back they had like Jimmy O'Brien and Tommy O'Brien on both sides. The O'Briens on both sides, and you would think like, we need to cover those positions. But and then the next try came in for Edinburgh, another intercept. There was multiple intercepts, and I just could not fathom what was happening. But it was very much like how Ireland played in the Six Nations when there was a couple of intercepts. It was that high risk, high reward ball that I didn't quite understand. Like I would understand once it went out, and I would understand once it worked, but it didn't really work today. However, Leinster just kept on scoring. Hugo Keenan scored a try just before the second half. That sort of almost in my head, not killed the game dead, because then right after another intercept try for Edinburgh, and it was just sort of like, what is going on? I felt like I was watching the Super Bowl. There was that many intercepts. It was just like an NFL game. It was just all you heard was intercepted, intercepted. It was
I
like playing a game
wonder
of.
if I wonder if Edinburgh kind of put that in, got that from analysis because against the Scarlets, I noticed how many passes Leinster were doing, and every play between every ruck, it was going like three or four sets of hands were touching it, and there were a couple of times where I felt the Scarlets could have gone for intercepts, and they did get one or two in the game. So I wonder if that was a plan the whole time
It
because they know that Leinster are going to play wide, they're going to put the ball through the hands, and you're going to get a chance.
It was very good analysis on their part because what they did was they rushed the first two receivers. They either rushed the person with the ball or they rushed this person in second, which I thought was brilliant by Edinburgh. However,
Mm.
Leinster doing what Leinster do in the second half, Josh van der Fleer bruited over in a maul. And then I thought, right, game's dead again. Then Darcy Graham came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It was like a half rundown. The Edinburgh fly half kicked
Mm.
it, and it was one of the Leinster players half ran it down, and then it bounced straight into Darcy Graham's hand, and it was always like Louis Belbery style, bounced into his hands, and he just ran with it. at this moment, Edinburgh in front. Then I sent that meme of that guy with like sitting up with the remote controller, going, "This
Yeah.
is what Edinburgh are doing. This is what Edinburgh are doing right now. This is
Yeah.
what the teams have to do right now." But yeah, after that, Leinster then just started turning the screw. It was almost sort of that classic Edinburgh feel. Once they hit 60 minutes, they fall off because it was around about the 55th minute was the next try, and well, it was about the 61st minute. Sorry, it was their next try, and then that's when Leinster just started to just dominate. They started to run in the tries. Awani had the really good try off the wing. It's almost like he needs to play for Leinster more. I feel like he's probably more utilized in a wing position. Leinster have very good wings. Leinster have very good
I
centers,
just want to
but
talk
Rico
about this
Awani,
try for a second because I want to see how it starts. Because this is it McGrath playing nine? Because Jimson gives Parks over here. So
Yeah.
did he get subbed off and
yeah.
come back on or something?
Um, do you know what? It came to one of those moments where I was just like, hold on, let me just double check for now because it was one of those moments that I didn't quite catch, and then I noticed that Gibson Park was on. Um, Let me just double check because normally they give you the rundown of subs.
Because is that Keenan
But
playing 10 and then goes to Burn there? So this is quite
it
unusual.
goes, yeah. Let me just double check the rundown because it was one of those that I noticed that happening, but I didn't like quite pick up when the sub happened. But I did feel like it was Robbie Henshaw came on for O'Brien, which I thought was really interesting because then that it automatically in my head was, of course, that pushes him out. Then McGrath came on. Um, McGrath came on for. I can't quite find it. I apologize to the listeners,
On the
but I
Champions Cup
can't quite
website, it says
remember
he
what
come
happened.
on the Champions Cup website, it says he came on for Gibson Park, but I can show you video evidence that that's not the case.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
Jameson Gibson
Gibson.
Park is there. I can see him in his
Yeah.
with his new extra aerodynamic head, and he throws a beautiful pass to
Mm.
Rico Ioane. That is very Darcy Graham, I have to say. I've seen Darcy Graham do that more than once. That kind of a business decision. Because for me, no, don't. There's a man in the passing lane already. Just tackle him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Even if you get bumped off, at least lay a finger on him. I don't like that, to be honest.
no. I
No,
think
that
I
was.
think yeah, I think for sorry, Ethan, do you wanna
Oh yeah, no, I was going to say it's just classic Edinburgh defending, where I think it was the Ulster game I pointed this out that there's no defense structure. Their and scramble defense is really good, but there's no system in place, especially when it goes to the wing, because usually, like in that Ulster game, it was always like a 2-on-1, and Edinburgh always lost that because it was Velicott. He made the tackle, and they just made the offload, and he just ran and scored. And here you've got Graham. It's like, yeah, it's not like Henry Arundel laziness where he doesn't do anything, but it's kind of like that just poor decision making. You kind of had your finger in your arse for like too long, and you should have just made the tackle.
Mm. From an Edinburgh
I
point of view, Ethan, we expected them to get a hiding, and they kind
Mm,
of did, but kind of didn't. But they're out anyway. Like one way or another,
mm.
they're out. What do we even take from this for Edinburgh? It's been a very weird Champions Cup campaign.
Yeah, I don't know how to read into this because it's one of those ones that Edinburgh. I think it was that Scarlets game. The Edinburgh just are amazing at seizing the opportunity in pure chaos. But as you're saying with that analysis, that they've clearly studied that off or the passing from, I think it's specifically from Gibson Park,
yeah, it was
and
that
they
little
might,
run.
yeah, and it's like they've clearly put a lot of work into that. But apart from those tries, which were quite lucky in the sense that to pull off an intercept try is not that easy
Mm.
because you have to read it really well. Um, And it's also, Leinster, if they had realised they were looking at that, should have adapted. But that and the Darcy Graham kind of wonder try from the pure chaos of it. It's not like they got a try from a maul. They didn't get, a beautiful set of phases to score a try. It's they've kind, you know what I mean? There's still not really any plan in place. Defense still isn't there. Their attacking looks sharper than it normally did. But still, they're not working through the phases. They're still relying on Thompson or Velicott. Well, granted, Velicott came on later, so Shield to make that kick and try and hope something happens. But always, they never kicked a touch, or the Leinster player just catches it and they're back to square one.
Hmm.
And yeah, oh, sorry, yeah.
No, I was just going to say it's very difficult to analyze Edinburgh. This is the difference between Edinburgh and Leinster. Even for like some schmuck like me on the internet, I find Leinster very easy to talk about because you deep dive their stats, you watch them play, and it's so structured and it's so repetitive is the wrong word, but it's so uniform, and they go through the same things again and again and again, and yeah, they're predictable. I think it's fair to say that Leinster are predictable in the way that they play. And yes, they've scored 7 tries and stuff today and converted every single one. Um, but I can imagine that if you're an opposition coach, finding something to exploit in Leinster is quite easy because even the Scarlets did it with the kick passes to find an edge, which kind of worked. Now Edinburgh have done it with the intercepts. Because they're so uniform, because they just go through the same processes again and again and again. Now that Rico Ioane try I really liked. That was quite unusual with where Byrne and Gibson Park were going and Ioane going over to the wing and stuff. But I just wondered that I don't get the sense that they're holding something in reserve. I get the sense with Leinster that they are trying to build up to something, and they're even though they're still getting the wins because this is the thing. And yes, we do judge Leinster differently. We just do. And as Adam said right at the beginning, we look at the lineup. We can't judge these teams on an equal footing. So yes, they're getting the wins, but it feels like when it goes wrong, it's going to go really wrong. To me, that's the vibe that I get.
Yeah, we saw with Northampton last season. When it goes wrong, it goes terribly wrong. And is there much difference between how Leinster play this season compared to last season? With, as you said, Hugh, with that, the reading of the game, and Ethan, you picked it up as well. Everyone knows that Gibson Park, when he starts an attack, he takes the ball and he runs 2 paces to the right or the left, but depending on which way the attack goes, and then he passes it. It took Edinburgh, what, the first attempt at that to be like, right, okay, we're either going to go on man on ball or we're going to go to the next receiver. And it worked out so well. And as you said, the Scarlets as well analyzed something else. Like Leinster play that cohesive, like cohesion is the word in Ireland because that's what Andy Farrell wants. You know,
Leo Cullen loves that word as well.
yeah, Leo Cullen loves that word as well, but you can see it in how Leinster play. They are toppling teams by breaking them down, but they're also seeing like they like if Leinster were behind at a bigger gap than they would have struggled because look at the Northampton game last season. They had like a 20 12-ish point gap between them and they didn't come back from that. Northampton just pushed on. Whereas with the Edinburgh, the only difference is this Edinburgh lead, as Ethan said, was all really much set up by Leinster mistakes. So Leinster knew what the issues were because they can easily fix it because their system is so like, right, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. Bearing in mind that I do feel like Gibson Park and the likes of Gibson Park and the likes of Harry Byrne and the likes of Awani in training probably plays multiple positions so that you know where you are standing in each position and how you are supposed to react. Because I think that's how Leo Cullen coaches, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong because when it works, as you can tell today, it works so perfectly. But when you see the expansiveness of Bordeaux, the expansiveness of Toulouse, and how unpredictable they are because of the talent, and they know what they're doing, but they also have that extra 3D edge. Do Leinster have that 3D edge? They had it last year, arguably with Jordy Barrett.
Yeah,
This year, it's hard to predict because it is feeling like it's their classic, you know, this is a win, they will take the win, move on. But is there that fifth star in their realm? I'm not sure unless, as you say, Hugh, they're holding back, but at the minute it doesn't look like they're holding back for anything.
not for me. Not for me. Uh, Anything to end on this one, Ethan?
I was going to say, I think they're very fortunate to be on this side of the pool because I mean, I wasn't inspired by Sale versus Harlequins last night. So Leinster
Well, you're
should
not. I'm
be,
shocked.
yeah. So Leinster should, I'm going to put should with asterisks around it, comfortably beat Sale. But if they're on the other side of the pool with any one of those, I'm not even looking at Toulouse or Bordeaux. I'm thinking Bath or even Northampton, that they could have posed a lot of trouble for Leinster. So they are quite lucky. Even the Bulls and Stormers would have given Leinster a lot more discomfort there.
Mm, I think so. This is why we have to tune into the URC. I think the URC semi-finals this year are going to be amazing. But
Yeah.
we'll come to that later. Last stat I'll mention from this game: 3 penalties to 7 is very Luke Pearce. Like, I do not see it. Play on, play on. No, lads, come on. Let's just have a duet here. Come on. Like that. That is very him. I don't hate it, to be honest. You know, we all turn up to watch rugby, not watch a referee blow his whistle. So I prefer that to the alternative. Right. Before I go on and talk about the next game, I just want to draw everyone's attention to this. I have only just learned, just in the last 10 minutes, Macron official Champions Cup apparel, which is being modelled here on our screen, on the Champions Cup website, up to 30% off. You're going to have to say, unless the starting price was £3, you're going to have to do a lot more than that for me. This one appears to have been photoshopped on very badly to what I assume is office help of some regard.
It looks like they've like AI'd people in. It's like, oh, can you can you try and like recall people from memory?
Save
Save
10%
10%
instantly.
instantly.
I'm not going to buy
That's
anything.
40%.
The,
That is, oh
that is
no.
niche. A Bilbao 26 finals mug. It looks like a Team GB Olympics thing. I don't
Would
hate
you put,
that. I don't hate these
Mm,
two things.
yeah.
They're a little bit expensive.
but
Um,
that's the thing, like they are really like who is going out in a Macron Champions Cup
what
beige
the?
unisex fleece
Who
for
is paying
129 euro?
129 euros for this
Yeah,
fleece?
that's what I mean.
Look, that's not
So
even on. Look at
so
this. That's added on in post, that is. That's not
so
really on
so
that fleece.
here, look, I'm telling jokes about this now, but when Ulster win the Challenge Cup and I ride in on an elephant and my 129 euro beige
You
fleece in the next podcast.
brown with green luminous text on Challenge Cup thing. Always rated it, lads. Always wanted it. 85 pound Champions Cup gilet.
Yeah.
Anybody? No?
It's
Anybody?
25 euro for a cap. It's 25 euro for a cap.
I've seen more expensive caps than that, to be fair. Will
Yeah.
my laptop just behave for a second? 40 euros on a bag? I've seen worse. I'll tell you what, I went to the UBB shop in Bordeaux. That was expensive. Hey, this one's not so bad.
Yeah.
This green retro jersey. EPCR again, but
It's like
what is that logo?
yeah, it's a classic like your nan buys you a rugby top for Christmas. Hey, it's got a rugby ball on it. Oh no. What is that?
What is that? That's added on in post as well, because all the rest of it is blurry.
I would love
For
it if
audio
it was
listeners, it's got a weird stencil thing on the back of rugby, but it's not actually on it. I don't know what's going on.
they should have put it in like one of the most iconic moments in Champions Cup, well, Heineken Cup history of the French fella doing that and then the other fella going in diving for the ball
Yeah,
in the
Rob
final,
Howley.
like Rob Howdy, yeah, it should have been like that iconic moment. But yeah, it's a very interesting. I don't know why they're only promoting this now. Um,
Maybe they've
yeah.
been throwing it for a long time and we just didn't know. Can't rule
Well,
that
that's the
out.
thing though. It being in Bilbao, I can imagine a lot of like the local Spanish like Bilbao, like they're all gonna have Bilbao gear,
Hmm.
like Bilbao final gear. So it's gonna be nice. Like I can't imagine there's gonna be a lot of, before the Aviva Leinster guys with half and half scarves going, three for a tenner, stuff like that.
Anyway, next game number 2 that we're going to talk about, Glasgow versus Bulls, another all URC game. I have to say, Ethan, I love Glasgow versus Bulls as a
Yeah.
fixture. It's got rivalry to it, it's got edge to it, it's got tactics to it, it's got great players on show. This is one of my favorite URC head to heads. And okay, we've seen it in the Champions Cup. I wouldn't be surprised if we see it at some point later in the URC season as well, because I do think the Bulls are trending in the right direction. And with some silly score lines knocking about in rugby at the moment, 25-21. This was a proper game of rugby for me. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I love when we play the Bulls because it's a nice rivalry. It's not one of those ones of oh we fucking hate you. It's one of those game recognizes game ones. It's
Yes.
a respect rivalry, being like, yeah, we know you're a good team. We beat you in the final of the URC, and then you immediately, no, I don't know if you call it a grudge match, but they were out for revenge last year. Like they're the last team to beat us at Scotstoun. Like which
I
is
remember that game. That was a
yeah,
great game as well.
yeah. And even in the regular URC league this season, that was a bit of not quite slugfest, but that was very hard fought game as well.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, it was a great game. The weather was horrendous. That it wasn't snowing. It was snowing this morning, but it was just miserable. Um, and I mean, fair play to both Glasgow and the Bulls because I was worried it'd be kind of like the Scotland-Italy match from the Six Nations where the
Mm.
weather would kind of stop Glasgow's attack. But thankfully, it didn't. They had to adjust slightly, but yeah, that was a scary Bulls pack though. So
It was a laden team, and I saw a South African podcast saying player for player, the Bulls team is probably stronger, but the difference is Franco. And we go on and on and on about Franco Smith, and that's not to disparage Johan Ackerman. He had a so-so start to the season. He had a very tricky middle to the season, and he's turned it around now, and I think he deserves credit for that. And like I said, I do think the Bulls are trending in the right direction. But he's still behind Franco at the moment, and I think that every coach in the URC is behind Franco, so there's no shame in that. And just generally, I'm repeating myself. I really enjoyed watching this game. What did we think of Dan Lancaster's performance?
I think it was a bold call. There were a few bold calls and choices. His kind of makes sense in that they're preparing him for the future. They're putting him in probably the hardest situation I think that Glasgow will have for some time. In the sense of high stakes, but also it's going to be an absolute physical game. With a bit of rivalry. That sure the South Africa campaign that we've got coming up soon will also be hard for different reasons.
Mm.
But like you know what I mean? It's more of that high pressure environment with one of your rivals. His kicking, granted, is normally okay. It was it was quite windy though, so I think
He kept
it's
trying to do these weird bendy kicks, and I didn't like it. I didn't.
yeah,
I didn't like it. I was like, mate, just kick it over. Stop trying to
yeah,
3D chess the weather.
yeah, yeah. So I think it's one of those ones you could probably put a little bit aside and blame it on the weather, but I think he's still learning
Mm.
that. I mean, it's also you're up against Pollard, so I think it might be a bit of I'm against double World Cup winner. Let's give it a
Mm.
go. Which Tom Jordan did last year. Like I made a bit of a meme where it's like, oh, this is the second time that Glasgow Tens completely finessed a double World Cup winner at Scotstoun in the Champions Cup. But
Well, I have to say that at the beginning of the season, and we made a short out of it at the time, I
mm,
thought that Pollard was going to flop at the Bulls this season. I didn't think it was going to go well. And for the first half of the season, that prediction was looking pretty good. But I actually think that the Bulls just playing him for every single game, like I don't know how many games he's played in a row now. I think about 10 games in a row he's
mm,
played. I think that's played him into form. And I think that's actually what he needed. And I've covered kind of my hot takes about Leinster and their player resting. I think sometimes you just need to give a guy game time. And I think that despite this whole narrative about Pollard being the old man of the Springbok Tens and stuff, he's still in his early 30s. He's not like Johnny Sexton type territory. I think that giving him the run of games has worked out and getting the stability with Papier inside him and stuff. It's going well. What is it about Kane and Moody? Always has a great game against Glasgow as well.
Yeah, no, he manhandled who was it? Yeah, it was Stafford. He like completely hoisted him up.
Mm.
And Stafford's a big man. He's like
Oh yeah, there
six
was that
five.
one, and people were like, "Oh, it was a bad tackle." It's like, no, he's just absolutely mullered him. I
Yeah,
thought it was fine.
yeah. Like Stafford's 6'4", 6'5", and he's a farmer. So he's got that farmer strength. He's bulk.
Yeah,
And Kane and Moody, because I've never thought Kane and Moody looked particularly big. I mean, I've not looked him up close sort of thing. But he never, if you look at McCluskey's a unit,
yeah.
Stafford's a unit, and Moody, he's a lot stronger than he looks, being able to just ragdoll Stafford. It's
Mm.
fair play. I'm trying to think what it was. Is it Marco van Staden?
Yeah, the guy who played hooker in this game.
Yeah, what was his problem? Because he was going mental. Because it was that I think it was kind of the turning point where the ref called tackle, but he continued to pull someone into touch, and there was a bit of handbags
Yeah,
after that, and I was just like,
but
Jesus.
I like. Well, that's what we want. That's
Oh
good.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But you know what? It's just like it just comes out of nowhere. Like
Yeah.
if there's a bit of like handbags throughout the game, like the Leinster game last week, you're like, yeah, this is understandable when it boils over. It just seemed like it came out of nowhere.
Mm.
Um, but what's my
Yeah.
call it?
Well, if I'd go to Adam,
Oh yeah, of
these are.
course, yeah,
Well, sorry, I'll come back to you in a second,
yeah.
Ethan. But Adam, there's two good teams going at it. How are you feeling about these two generally?
I thought it was I thought it was a brilliant game. I really enjoyed watching it. I think I tend to love the European games when it's like two different leagues playing against each other, but when it's, as we say, it's Bulls v Glasgow, we know the history there. I thought it was brilliant. Like it's really good to see the Bulls play a really like I thought it was brilliant to see, and we're gonna speak about it in a bit, the two South African teams going away from Europe and putting in a performance. Yes, they both lost, but I thought Glasgow were brilliant. Like I thought it's really good to see Glasgow get a string of wins in Europe as well. You know, winning that European knockout. I know the round 16. I know there's a bit of like, is there an asterisk? You can call it an asterisk because it wasn't there before. But winning a European knockout game and having, the next game as well being, in Scotstoun, I thought it was just, for Glasgow's sake, it's a nice way to think about semi-finals. The way that they played as well and the way that they're winning, this is you would say. Scottish teams in the past in the Champions Cup don't necessarily play that way, and they would normally focus either on the league or, I'm trying to think of the last time a Scottish team got to like the Champions Cup semi-final, and I'm trying to think back to when I saw a Champions Cup semi-final was Ulster v Edinburgh in 2012. So I think that's probably the last time that we saw a Scottish team in a semi-final of a Champions Cup. Glasgow look like they can fully go on to a Champions Cup semi-final. The way that they were playing here, the way that the Bulls were playing against them as well, I thought it was a really good, high quality game. And I think Glasgow have what's the difference between Glasgow and Leinster is I feel like Glasgow have way more left in their tank. Especially with their next game going into it on the same side of the draw.
Hmm. Going back to you, Ethan, what were you going to add?
Oh yeah, no, that's the best performance I've seen from Patrick Schickerling. He was phenomenal, and because normally he's a bit of a penalty machine.
Hmm.
I think he was the one when we played Bulls in the league that we got so many scrum warnings because of him. He immediately came off, and then basically whoever came on next got a yellow purely from him. But no, he had an incredible game. Kind of a Lucari run at one point when he threw a dummy and then sprinted down the wing, but
Hmm.
unfortunately he didn't have the same result.
Yeah.
But yeah, got to
Well,
send
we'll
my
co-
due diligence to him.
yeah. Well, we'll come back to talk about where we think Glasgow might end up a little bit later on the show when we do the predictions for next week. But before we do that, I just want to remind people that if you're enjoying what you are watching so far, please consider subscribing to the Global Game Line on YouTube. This is one of the most diverse rugby channels that you will find out there. There are specialist, dedicated podcasts to almost any topic that you can think of. So this is what would normally be a URC show, and is currently a Champions Cup show, has been a Six Nations show in the past. There is also a dedicated South African show, a dedicated Irish show, a dedicated USA show. You need to check that out. That's stuff outside your comfort zone. A dedicated French rugby show. There's a women's rugby show that will be coming back. There's team sheet teardowns. There's all the things. There's probably a bunch of stuff that I've forgotten as well. So if it's a bit of rugby from a bit of everywhere. And if that sounds like a bit of you, please consider subscribing. All right, then. Let's now talk about their next game, which was Toulon hosting the Stormers down in the south of France. I'm going to be controversial here. This is the correct result for this game. I think that Toulon were clearly the better team, and I think the Stormers would have been very lucky to steal it. Adam, you're nodding your head.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was almost like that sense of the way that Edinburgh kept in the game. There was, I think Toulon had, as I'm going to point out again, look at that team. That team is star-studded. It's not quite the same as 2013, 2014, but it's always one of those
No.
teams where I kind of look at and go, they still
This
have
guy,
money. They still have
this
money.
guy, this guy was cash money. Charles Olivon, I thought he was the reason they won. Literally in the end, but I thought he was excellent throughout.
Olivon was excellent. I thought Ben White had a very good game as well. There's a Anton Fish, formerly of Ireland and Munster fame. Wonder how he's doing. But it's one of those games where I was watching this as well, and going from Storm Dave to like beforehand, like this was like before the game when I went to it, like going like, oh, look at how nice the south of France is, and then looking outside to quite literally a tornado. But I thought it was a really entertaining game to watch. I really enjoyed this one. The point difference, I think, flattered Stormers a little bit. I did think, as I said before, it's really nice to see the South African teams go up with strengthened teams to these games as well to actually put up a fight in the Champions Cup. And I'll speak about in the Interpro Show, the Challenge Cup as well. But yeah, I agree with you, Hugh. I think Toulon dominated where they needed to, and in the end, it went in half time 14-13, and it ended 28-27. So it was one of those that I thought that, yeah, fair enough. They were a point ahead, but I feel like it was much more than a point in theory.
I did, Ethan, have you got any thoughts before I give my before I get on my soapbox about this game?
Yeah, I feel like you're kind of right about Toulon being a better team because Somers did do stuff well, but it's just their attack that we're talking about repeatedly that their attack's just not sharp enough. And that, like at the end there, for that, what should have been their last try. I'm not going to go into that decision because I think it was the right refereeing call. But they had a 15-13 advantage. They should have just passed wide. They should have worked it a bit more. So I think they just made the wrong decision that any
Yeah.
other team would have been rubbing their hands and licking their lips at for that opportunity.
100%. I think if you look at the tries that Toulon scored, particularly the one that Drayan scored towards the end of the first half, where it went through the hands, it was a lovely set play. I really thought that Toulon pulled the trigger really well. And Albonoz, I'm not sure he's made Toulon definitely better, but I think he's having an impact. And formerly, obviously, of the URC, was playing URC rugby at the beginning of this season. And I just thought that they looked like they had more razzle dazzle to them. And the Stormers managed to drag them down into an arm wrestle. And it kind of worked for them. But Toulon didn't convert their chances in the first half. I think it's important to remind people as well who maybe don't follow the top 14. Toulon are a team in crisis right now. They've had some really bad results. They lost 5 games in a row, I think. Their coach, there's all sorts of stuff in the back, in the background going on with their head coach and stuff. Um, so the Stormers are in better form. But I think, as you rightly say, Ethan, it's all about the Stormers' attack again. And as you rightly say, when you've got a two-man advantage and you've got a platform in their 22 and you don't find the space, you manage to run at someone and they drag you over the try line. You got no one to blame but yourself. I'm sorry. And if you look at the first half, the Stormers were within a point at half time. I think that Toulon left tries out there, whereas the Stormers' try was fortunate a little bit, didn't necessarily come from a structured attack, and kicked two penalties to keep them in it. And just they nearly got in it. And what nearly won it for them? And if they had have won it, what it would have all been about, it would have been Sasha Feinberg and Gonzulu beats Toulon in 20 minutes. That's what the headline would have been. And that would have been an accurate reflection of the game as well. He came on the bench and he talk about an impact sub. I was watching it. I was even a little bit annoyed because I was like, if the Stormers win this, the Saffers are going to go absolutely crazy about the impact that Sasha had in this game because he completely changed it up. I'm just going to put it out there. I don't like Willemser on the wing. Yes, he had one amazing moment and generated a line break and stuff, but he's too good of a player to stick out there on the wing for me.
Sorry, on not necessarily on the wing point, could I just point out something about the benches that really struck me?
Mm.
The fact that they brought on Sasha, and then who did Toulon bring on? Manu Nonu. It was just like 43 years of age, gets it a yellow, 3-minute cameo. Fair play to him for making the money. Fair play. But my goodness, sorry, I've got dogs in the background. But fair play. Fair play to Nanu. He's making the money, he's making the cash. But I was almost confused as to why he was still playing. But yeah, fair play to him.
Yeah. So I agree. It was nice to see the Stormers send a proper team and stuff. Um, I think and it's also crazy as well that the Stormers won 3 out of 4 games in the pool stages, and the Bulls won 1 out of. Sorry, the Stormers won 3 out of 4, and the Bulls won 1 out of 4, and they've kind of finished both their campaigns kind of the same, and that's clearly unfair. The Stormers should have been playing at home. The seeding is a nonsense, but then again, that comes back down to their attack. They don't score enough points to pad the table, and like it or not, that's just how rugby works at the moment. So, sorry, Stormers. Sorry, Stormers. I do. Their set piece is good. What can I say? Their set piece is good, and Sasha would have been the talk of the town had they won that match. I'm just checking. Is there any other URC games that we haven't spoken about? I think everything else was English and French, wasn't it?
Yep.
Only the 3
I think
games.
just yeah.
Come back, microphone. I need to plug in my phone because it's going flat. Come on. Don't let me down now. Right, so let's get into predicting next week. So quarterfinals, and because we're now down to a limited number of games, we are going to allow some Challenge Cup talk as well. So Champions Cup first. Predictions are first game in the quarterfinals is Glasgow versus Toulon. Ethan, I'd be confident if I were you. I'd be quiet. Well, no, I'd be openly confident. You should win that one.
Yeah, I think there is a bit of history between them because we lost to Toulon in 2022. It was for the Challenge Cup final, where with under Franco's first season in charge. But when Franco's kind of brushed that aside in the sense he doesn't like to dwell too far in the past and stuff, which I think's a fairly healthy attitude to coaching. But yeah, I wasn't really super impressed with Toulon yesterday. Good gosh.
Mm.
That I think with better weather, Glasgow really should be taking that. Um, yeah, I think if a team like Stormers, as much as I do like the Stormers, as we were saying, their attack's not that sharp, and yet they still almost pulled off that what would have been an upset.
Mm. No, I think Toulon, especially away from home, I don't think will trouble the Glasgows. Adam, thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's the same. I think Glasgow have the potential here to do to get to that, semi-final. I think I think it would be a home semi-final as well,
Yep.
based
Yep.
on that side and that, you're talking a possibility of going on to a final there. Like those home games mean so much, and it's brilliant to see Glasgow actually pushing on and probably, pushing on for Europe as well. But I think Glasgow, I'd say by 10 points, I reckon, for that game.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. Leinster versus Sale. How on earth have Sale made it this far?
Yeah.
What the heck? It's got to be. It's the same as any kind of Leinster game until you get to like the semi-finals. Really, it should be a 20-point win without breaking sweat. Should be,
Yeah, I could see a Leinster rotated team going into this and them still winning. It's just depending on
but
what
they won't.
they no, they 100% won't. I think they're gonna look at it. They're gonna look at it as like they need to like properly beat a team to try and scare Glasgow or Toulon in the semi-finals. But I'd say Leinster by a healthy 30 points for that game. I don't see Sale, you know, putting a finger on them. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what the attendance is like for this game. The attendance wasn't that great for the Aviva for Leinster Edinburgh, and with a week turnaround, there's a lot of talk of Aviva, like is the Aviva getting a bit too tired for Leinster fans? It's probably what the RDS is there for in the hindsight, but it's going to be interesting to see the crowd for this one. But I'm going to say Leinster by 30.
Mm. Ooh, I'm not sure I'd go by 30.
Yeah.
Ethan, what are you saying?
I feel Leinster should be winning this, but I really hope George Ford just takes the piss and just spams as many drop goals as possible.
I'm going to start the bidding at five. Five George Ford drop goals in the
Yeah.
first half. That's where
And
I'm starting.
see, the issue is there, Lou, to have unstoppable force, which is a movable object, and
Yeah.
whoever the Leinster 10 is, and or Kieran Frawley,
Yeah.
to be in the drop goal seat then.
Yeah.
This is the real game. UBB versus Stad Tulu Zone. This is the real. This is where the real cheese will be divided out. Right. How does one get to the Challenge Cup fixtures? I assume that I have to some kind of get on some kind of diesel powered
You need to
tractor.
you need to send smoke signals, mate. It's my first Challenge Cup game yesterday. They don't even have a cool wee tune the way that the Champions Cup do. I was expecting a and I was like, oh no, they didn't have any of that. I was just like,
Yeah.
at least when you think of the football, Europa League has a better theme song than the Champions League. So I was hoping for something like that, but
Yeah. Right, got lots to talk about in this one. Yeah, a URC team in every fixture. How exciting. Right, Montpellier versus Connacht. I think Montpellier. Unless Montpellier rotate like craziness, I think that they are going to win that kind of comfortably. Sorry, Connacht.
I think Connacht played really well against Stormers. I think they will throw something at it.
Sharks.
Sure. But yeah, oh sorry, Sharks. I apologize. I thought they played really well against the Sharks. It was their sixth game in a row. Stuart Lancaster's building something dangerous down there. Does he want a statement win in France? Yes. Do I see them doing it? Possibly. Am I saying that just because I want Montpellier to be um either Montpellier to go out of the tournament or an Irish win? I'll leave that up to you. But you know, yeah, I do see Montpellier winning it, but I'd say it'd be by a score.
Ethan.
I'm just trying to think who plays for Montpellier apart from he who should not be named. Um,
Nucci is their
yeah,
captain. He played for France in the Six Nations. They've got Picardo, Argentinian inside centre, very, very good. Tom Banks, who's played like every minute of the top 14, indestructible man. Um, I'm forgetting someone really obvious. They sign like 10 people every season and you just forget them. But they're
yeah,
they're having a very, very good season in the top 14.
yeah. That's
What was
what would the, oh, sorry, Adam.
no, sorry, no, it's just sorry, speaking
Yeah.
for myself. Sorry.
Would Montpellier focus on the Challenge Cup if it means they could get something from it, or would they rather just focus on the top 14?
Oh, the top seeds. The
The
top
top.
seeds. I think they've got enough because they've been going well away from home in the top 14, which is
Mhm,
unusual. Mostly in the top 14 is like there for the away games, but Montpellier give a good account of themselves away from home.
mhm.
So they're just a annoyingly functional and decent rugby team. Um, So that's why I think the seeding, number one seeds as well, just suits them down to the ground.
Yeah, I mean, I'm leaning towards a Montpellier win, but I don't know whether I don't think it'll be by much, but I'm not expecting a blowout or anything like that.
Hmm. Okay. Next game, Zebre versus Dragons.
It's
Yes.
this
Um,
is what the Challenge Cup was for.
this is what the Challenge Cup is for. What a win for the Dragons today away in Stade Francais. Massively famous day for the region and for a Welsh club flying the flag. Fantastic. Fantastic. But Zebra battering Poe.
Poe.
Yeah,
Poe, yeah.
today. Uh, Fairly comprehensive win. Fifth seeds as well. This is a massive opportunity for both teams. This is low key, like kind of the biggest game, just because it's such a massive game for both sides. These two could, the Scarlets are still down there, but these two could finish 15th and 16th in the URC. But one of them is going to get to a European semi-final, which is amazing for both. The Zebra getting to a European semi-final is mad. I think Zebra are favourites due to home advantage, but I think the Dragons are a better team. So I think this is weirdly the one to watch.
Yeah, that's if it's on TV. The only thing about the Challenge Cup is that I was looking so hard to find Stade Francais v Dragons, and I was just like, just can't find it. Just sort of gave up. Yeah, interesting game. Will it be televised? I hope. Um, I can see Dragons winning that. I can fully see Dragons getting to a semi-final. Um, yeah, to play Montpellier, that's such an interesting concept.
Yeah, Ethan.
I mean, it's kind of, that meme from The Simpsons when it's those monkeys fighting on the ship and everyone's like
Yeah.
gambling on it.
Yeah.
That's kind of, I mean, it feels like that's not really a fair one in that they've both got so much to play for here. But that's just kind of what's coming to my head. I think Dragons should be winning that based off how well they did against, oh gosh, who did they play in South Af? Because they were in South Africa recently, weren't they?
Yes, they gave the Lions a
Yeah,
good game.
yeah. I feel like they probably should, based on that, they should be beating Sabre. And Dragons, as we all know, with Welsh rugby at the moment, with everything that's going on, I feel like Dragons have quite a lot of motivation behind it as well.
Hmm. Dragons have got real affinity for the Challenge Cup as well. They've gotten to two semi-finals already under Lynn Jones. So if they get to a third, it's impressive. It's impressive. Uh, Benetton versus Exeter. Hmm. 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 Benetton's game against Cardiff was mad. I didn't watch it, but I was following the scores. I was like, what the flipping heck is going on here? It's the opportunity, say, a norm for, and whatever that is in Italian for Benetton. Exeter are going well in the Prem. Yeah.
They beat a good Munster team as well. Like they handily beat a Munster team as well with Tag Byrne and Jack Crawley. It was really weird to me when I saw the score updates because I would have thought that Munster would have taken this seriously. But I said last week, didn't I, that Munster were the ones to probably throw the game. They did. Like no team goes out to throw a game. They put out their strongest team. And Exeter handled them quite well. So that's probably if Zebra Dragons was game of the game to watch. I would say this would come as a close second due to how well one Treviso have played in the Challenge Cup. They were top seeds for a while as well. And two, how Exeter can pull out that shock. So it'd be interesting to see.
Hmm. Ethan, prediction?
Ugh. I like Benetton, but Benetton's not the most consistent team. So if they're in good form on the day, I think they should take it. But I'm gonna go Exeter because they'll be quite hyped up from how
Hmm.
well they played against Munster.
I think I'm going to back Exeter as well. And that if that comes true, then it's a bad season for Benetton. I would like Benetton to win, but that's just not what I'm feeling at the moment. And then Ulster versus Stade Rochellais, or La Rochelle to you and me. Adam, La Rochelle are here by accident. They fully intended to lose to Newcastle and accidentally beat them. So if that's anything to go by, Roger's going to send the under 12s to come and be, and they'll be under strict instructions. If you are winning with 5 minutes to go, just lie down, put the ball on the floor and just lie down with your faces down and just,
Uh,
just,
I'd I'd be ringing Rog for a couple of front rows if he needs to help us. I've never been to a game where most of the front rows, bar two, went off with injury. Everyone went off. Angus Bell went off. Then Angus Bell's replacement went off. Rob Herring went off. Stewart came on. Wilson came on at tight head. Then our replacement loosehead came off and Tom O'Toole came back on. Then he had a cramp, nearly came off again. So if Raj wants to help us in any way, shape, or form, I would want him to go to his La Rochelle big mansion and see to his bin men. I want him to pick the first three men he sees and put them in the front row. If he's got any consolation, But yeah, I think if Ulster were to like to put it in a more serious tone, if Ulster were to win this and to get to a semi-final, and if Exeter were to get to the semi-final, we had a home semi-final, I'd be thinking about a trip to Bilbao. I think it would be nice, but yeah, it's one of those where I think Ulster needs to win this. I don't think we won convincingly against Ospreys at all. I think Ospreys played really well against us yesterday, but I think Ulster to win it. Ravenhill. Hopefully it's going to be snowing. That will throw off La Rochelle again. What they did to us a couple of years ago with the delegate thing when we had to go to the Aviva the next day. We still haven't forgot about that. They're all going to be delegates in the crowd there to that day. So yeah, Ulster to win.
well, I probably agree. Is the semi-finals in a neutral ground or
I don't think so. I think it's not neutral for the Champions Cup, is it?
I just think I've got half a,
No, no, for Champions Cup, it's because we should be playing at Scotstoun, but because of the Commonwealth Games, we're having to go presumably Hampton. If we get that far, I will
Hmm.
put that out there. If we get that far,
Is
because
it?
oh sorry, Adam,
No, no, sorry, Ethan.
because
It was,
I can't remember if it's the same country, so it's not fully neutral, but neutral in the sense it's not normally your own stadium.
and
unless you're
also I have a
Leinster,
feeling that
obviously, where you're just playing the
Yeah,
Aviva.
I think it's one of those where I think it's also due to the South African teams traveling. Possibly. It would be a neutral ground.
Hmm. Okay. Well, that brings us to the end of the show. I shan't drag it out any longer, so I'll just say thank you for joining me to Irish Adam and Scottish Ethan.
Cheers,
thank you.
Shout out to South African Mohammed. He'll be on the Bit of an Animal podcast later in the week. I have, for the purposes of this podcast, been Welsh you. This leaves me to say subscribe, enjoy your rugby, and I hope that everybody's team wins. Bye bye.